I thought losing my husband was the hardest thing I would ever face, but what my own son whispered at his funeral broke me in ways I never imagined. And then a secret letter from my late husband changed everything. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and like the channel. It means the world to me and helps us share more stories of love, loss, and strength. My name is Maria Easton, and I just laid to rest the man who had walked beside me for most of my life. After decades of marriage, the little house in the Charleston suburbs now feels unbearably empty and cold. Ray, my husband, my anchor, passed away only days ago after a long, brutal battle with pancreatic cancer. I sat by his side through endless nights in the hospital, holding his hand, whispering promises that I would be okay. I thought I understood grief until the day of the funeral. It was a soft April drizzle that morning, the kind of rain that feels like the sky itself is crying. The chapel smelled of white chrysanthemums and beeswax candles. I wore Ray's favorite black dress and the necklace he gave me on our 10th Christmas together, trying to stay strong, just as Ray would have wanted. But then, in the middle of all that mourning, I overheard something that shattered me. Just a few feet away, my son Caleb and his wife Denise were whispering. "What do you think about Maple Grove? It's close to our house. She really shouldn't be living alone anymore. And that house, I don't think she can manage it much longer." Their voices cut deeper than the funeral hymns ever could. My husband wasn't even gone 2 full weeks, his ashes not yet at rest, and already they were talking about moving me away, like an old chair that no longer fits in the living room. That night, alone in the house filled with pictures of Ray and me, I sat staring at the untouched cookies Denise had brought. "Good for older people," she'd said with a faint smile. My chest ached. Every creak of the wooden floor, every brick of the house meant everything to me, but nothing to them. And then the phone rang. It was Harold Klenn, an old friend of Ray's and our family attorney. His calm voice carried a strange weight. "Maria, I need to meet you privately. Ray left something behind for you." A letter. A letter. My heart skipped. Ray was a man of few words, but when he wrote something, it always carried meaning. The thought of him leaving me one last message sent a shiver through me. Days later, I sat in Harold's quiet office. The smell of old paper and coffee lingered in the air as he handed me an envelope tied with pale brown string. My hands trembled as I recognized Ray's handwriting. "My Maria," the letter began. "If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. But I must warn you about something even harder than my death, facing the truth alone." Ray had never spoken harshly of our son. He was patient, kind, and always saw the good in people. But in this letter, his words were different. Clear, sharp, undeniable. "Caleb is no longer the boy we raised. I've watched quietly, and I fear he doesn't see you as his mother anymore, but as a burden. And Denise, she fuels that thought in his mind." I closed my eyes, tears burning hot, picturing Ray's steady hand as he wrote those words. For him to write this, it meant he had seen a truth I had refused to see out of love. And in that moment, sitting in Harold's office with Ray's words in my hands, I realized my story was no longer just about grief. It was about survival. Refused to see. I turned to the second page. Ray's tone grew more practical. "So like him, I've made sure you'll never have to be afraid. Over the past years, I've quietly transferred a portion of my construction company's profits into investment accounts under your name. As of now, you have nearly $1 million across 3 separate accounts, all solely in your name." I was stunned. Ray had never hinted at any of this. I thought he only had a modest pension, a few minor shares, and the nearly paid-off house. Harold slid a thin stack of documents toward me, neatly clipped inside a black leather folder. He instructed me to manage this estate under your direction only. No third party, including Caleb, can interfere without your signature. I flipped through the pages. The accounts were listed clearly. Current balances, identifying numbers, annual deposit records, and a breakdown of additional assets like a wooden cabin in Vermont, a place I'd never even visited. Ray had planned everything, not for death, but for the quiet battle that might follow. I read the final line of the letter. Maria, if you let yourself be controlled, let them convince you that you're weak, then everything I did will mean nothing. You once carried the entire family when I started a business with nothing but my bare hands. You stayed up all night tutoring so Caleb could attend a good school. You are not weak. You just need to remember how strong you've always been. And this time, hold on to that. Not for me, for yourself. I folded the letter and looked at Harold. He trusted you completely, he said softly. And if I may speak honestly, so do I. That Saturday, the sky was a painfully clear blue. Sunlight stretched across Birch Hill Street, where I'd lived for years. The lavender bushes Ray planted last spring still reached toward the wooden steps. I wore a soft, smoky blue sweater and the scarf Ray used to love, just enough to look mature and delicate. Exactly how Caleb and Denise wanted me to seem. They arrived on time, like it was a business meeting. Caleb wore a buttoned-up dress shirt and carried a slim folder like a real estate agent. Denise smiled brightly in a pale cream dress, her hair neatly tied as if heading to a seminar on proactive aging. We hope you'll like this place, Mom, Caleb said as the car pulled away, his voice subtly emphasizing the words Mom, and like as if trying to convince himself. I looked out the window. Rows of red brick houses passed by, each corner holding a memory I once shared with Ray. Memories that my son now planned to replace with antiseptic smells and scheduled meal times. Harmony Hills. That was the name. A senior living facility designed like a miniature resort nestled beside Riverstone Park. A black wrought iron gate curved at the entrance, and the green lawn stretched all the way to the community center. Everything was spotless, organized, and eerily sterile. This place was actually featured in an article about the most welcoming retirement communities in the state, Denise announced enthusiastically, as if introducing a honeymoon resort. We were greeted by a woman named Miss Barbara Block, the resident transition director. She spoke quickly, her smile pasted on like a thin adhesive across her carefully made-up face. We don't call it a nursing home, but a community for active, independent, and connected living, she said, her voice like a Sunday morning infomercial. I nodded, keeping my eyes on everything. The pastel-flowered wallpaper in the common room, the folded wheelchair tucked into the corner of the waiting area. The air carried a scent, not quite antiseptic. Not food either, but the smell of waiting. Waiting for something no one wanted to name. The model room is at the end of the hall. You'll love it, Mom, Caleb said, leading the way like he'd lived there before. The room was bright with a window facing the garden, a low wooden bed, and a rocking chair. There was even a mounted TV and a small table for tea. Pleasant, I admitted, but it felt like a space prepared for someone to finish. Here, you won't have to worry about cleaning or cooking. They serve 3 meals a day, flexible menus. You'll be so much more comfortable, Denise added gently. I turned to Barbara, keeping my tone light. How much is the monthly fee? Oh, this unit is part of the standard package, about $1 a month. That includes meals, room service, regular health checkups, and community activities. I tilted my head. And what if I want to travel, visit relatives in another state, or leave for a few weeks? Well, you'd still need to hold the room, so the fee remains. But don't worry, we always keep it ready for our residents' return. And what if I want to cook? Barbara blinked. Each unit has a kitchenette, but honestly, you won't really need it. It seems like everything here is designed so people don't need to do anything at all. Denise chimed in. You'll finally get to rest, Mom. Join yoga classes, read, walk around the garden. No one wants you to struggle anymore. My eyes quickly scanned the documents Caleb had opened on the table. Personal belongings checklist, account transition guide, emergency payment policy. They'd prepared everything thoroughly, Strategically, assuming I would agree, Maria. Barbara smiled. What do you think? What do you think? Would you like us to hold a spot for you? The boy who once clung to my sleeve over a failed quiz now sat across from me, eyes cool, calculating, as if I were a form waiting to be signed. You really think I'm too weak to live on my own? I asked, my voice soft as a feather, but sharper than anything I'd ever said. Caleb froze. Denise kept smiling. Mom, it's not that. We just want you safe and cared for and convenient for you to handle my finances, my decisions, and the rest of my life. Without breaking eye contact, I got to my feet. Thank you, Barbara. This place is unforgettable. Days after the Harmony Hills tour, Caleb showed up at my house unannounced. He knocked hard like it was an emergency. But when I opened the door, the first thing I saw was restrained impatience behind his polite smile. We need to talk, Caleb said bluntly as he walked into the living room. I stayed calm, poured us each a cup of hot tea, then sat across from him, surrounded by family photos, right where Ray used to read his morning paper. About what? I asked softly, gently turning the teacup in my hand. About everything about your future. Harmony Hills is a good option. Denise and I did our research, but you keep avoiding the topic, asking questions that make it feel like you're not willing to cooperate. I looked up and met my son's eyes. What do you mean I'm not cooperating? Caleb sighed, then sat upright like he was in a meeting with a client. You're living alone in a house that's too big. I know you're strong, but the truth is you can't do everything like before. We just want to help you live more comfortably. I stayed quiet for a moment. Then I set my teacup down and asked, if I move into the nursing home like you want, and after a few years I run out of money, what happens then? Will you and Denise take me in? The question hung in the air. Caleb blinked like he couldn't believe his mother had gotten straight to the point. The silence didn't last a full minute, but it was enough for me to understand everything. Why would you ask that, Mom? He deflected. Just answer honestly, I said slowly. I can't afford the fees anymore. Would you bring me home? A small room in your 2-bedroom apartment? A seat at the table? Doctor appointments? Or would you look for a place that's more budget-friendly? Caleb looked away. His chest rose and felt like he was swallowing something bitter. I walked to the wooden cabinet where Rye had kept our important papers. I pulled out a folder I'd prepared after meeting with Harold, then returned to the table and placed the papers firmly in front of my son. I'm not broke, Caleb. He stared at the first account statement. When his eyes landed on the number, I saw his hands tremble slightly on the table. This account, I said, pointing at the line, is under my name, mine alone. And here are 2 more accounts, plus the house Ray left in Vermont and the investment trust I transferred years ago. Caleb picked up a sheet like he was hoping there'd been a typo. What? What is this? I sat back down, my tone as steady as flowing water. Rye didn't just leave assets. He left trusts. He knew there'd come a day when I'd need to protect myself, and he prepared everything for me. What he didn't expect was that the one I'd need protection from would be his own son. You think I'm trying to take something from you? Caleb shot up his voice louder. I never asked you for anything. Never took a cent. No, you didn't ask, but you calculated step by step. From the nursing home suggestion, to managing my finances, to transferring property. I'm not blind, Caleb. I just stayed quiet to see how far you'd go. Caleb pushed back his chair, face red. What kind of person do you think I am? The kind who sees his mother as a financial plan? The kind who thinks if he casts her as a frail old woman in need of help, he can take control of the rest of her life? He turned toward the door, but paused, his back straight like a stiff plank of wood. You can live alone now, but you won't always be able to. You're going to need me, and if you keep acting like you don't, you might lose that help altogether. You're wrong, Caleb. Help only has value when it comes without strings attached. He opened the door and walked out without looking back. The door closed with a dry, hard click. I looked at the papers on the table. They were no longer just numbers. They were a shield. They were freedom. They were the answer to every disguised negotiation in the name of family. I moved to the kitchen and poured a fresh cup of tea, my hands steady. Outside, the late afternoon sun lit up the lavender bushes as out front. Caleb was gone, but the storm had only just begun. 1 week after that confrontation with Caleb, I registered an account on the website of Builders for Change, a nonprofit that builds homes and supports education in underprivileged communities in East Africa. I remember clearly typing, "retired high school teacher under previous occupation," and then pausing for a long time at the question, "What do you hope to bring to the community?" I wrote, "I want to prove that it's never too late to start living your own life." Weeks later, I booked a one-way ticket to Tanzania. The backpack I carried wasn't heavy, just a few lightweight clothes, a book Ray used to read, and a small notebook for blogging. I named the blog Second Journey and posted my first entry from Boston International Airport. My name is Maria Easton. My husband just passed away. My son thinks I should be in a nursing home. But instead of moving into a QT room with 3 press-scheduled meals a day, I'm flying Kiaman away to a village where I'll help rebuild a school destroyed by flooding. None of them knew that just a month ago, I couldn't tell the difference between a tourist visa and a short-term residence permit. But standing among the broken bricks of a little school in Arusha, alongside women carrying clay on their heads and children who looked at me with curiosity and excitement, I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. By day, I learned to mix cement, push wheelbarrows, lay bricks. At night, I wrote like someone who'd never been allowed to speak, wrote to remember, to release, to reclaim the pieces of myself I thought were gone. I wrote. Within just 2 weeks, my blog started spreading. One reader commented, "I'm never left Illinois. Your story made me book my first ever flight." A widowed woman in Oregon wrote, "You don't know how much I cried reading your third post when you described holding a hammer and realizing you still mattered." And so each shared story became a little flame that lit me up each night under the hot, sticky skies of northern Tanzania. Meanwhile, Caleb started sending messages. At first, a few gentle reminders. "Mom, Denise is asking when you're coming back." Then it shifted to, "Mom, Denise is pregnant and we're pretty stressed about finances. Could you help out for the first few months? I'll take care of it later." I was no longer the one shielding others from the consequences of their immaturity. Months later, I relocated to Uganda with the mobile medical team from MedForward. Though I wasn't a healthcare worker, I was assigned to coordinate logistics, distribute basic medicine, and manage patient records. I learned how to mix oral rehydration salts, learned how to tell the difference between chest pain from a heart condition and a cough from malaria, learned how to listen without jumping to conclusions, a skill I realized Caleb and Denise should have learned long ago. One afternoon, while I was sitting under the wooden shelter editing a blog post, I received the one message that made me stop typing. "Mom, Denise just gave birth. It's a girl. We named her Eleanor, after your middle name, but we need you, please." I stared at the screen, Eleanor. The name Ray used to call me in his handwritten letters back when we were in college. My heart stirred for a moment, but then I remembered that afternoon in the living room when I asked Caleb if he'd take me in if I ran out of money. And the silence that followed had answered everything. Lee closed my laptop. That night, I wrote my blog post. People often confuse love with need, but loving someone doesn't mean letting them use your presence as a backup plan. Being a mother doesn't mean erasing yourself. Being a wife doesn't mean your life ends when your husband dies. I'm years old. I'm living. Not just breathing, but living every single minute. I hit publish. Outside the hut, rain fell in waves. Under the lantern light, I looked at my hands. Calloused, sun-darkened, bruised, but stronger than they'd ever been. Caleb never imagined this version of Maria, but I had ever since I stepped onto that first flight. leaving behind a warm house and cold relationships. Freedom. I didn't ask anyone's permission to claim it. I was wiping the whiteboard in a makeshift classroom on the outskirts of Gulu, northern Uganda, when the phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number from the U.S.-Massachusetts area code. I hesitated, then answered, "Is this Mrs. Maria Easton?" A gentle female voice came through, carrying a polished, professional tone. "This is Rebecca from Brookhaven Senior Care Center. I'm calling to confirm that you've agreed to receive long-term care services at our facility." I squinted. "I've never contacted your facility." A short pause, then the woman's voice softened, more cautious. "I understand. The issue is a short pause. Your son, Mr. Caleb Easton, has called more than 6 times in the past weeks. He identified himself as your legal representative and requested that we file a state assistance application on your behalf, including a cognitive capacity evaluation." I set my marker down and tightened my grip on the phone. "What did he say about my condition?" I asked, keeping my tone even. "That you've recently shown signs of confusion, are vulnerable to financial manipulation, and are no longer capable of making major decisions." I closed my eyes for a few seconds, fighting back the anger. "Thank you for calling. But let me make one thing clear. I am fully alert, sound of mind, and have the legal documentation to prove it. And if he contacts you again, please request a court-certified legal authorization. Otherwise, I ask that you stop entertaining claims made by someone OGR, a new post trying to construct a false narrative. I understand. I'm very sorry for the inconvenience, Mrs. Easton." The phone clicked off. I didn't move. Light filtered through the curtain, soft and golden, brushing against my hand like a quiet answer. Now roughened by months of work on construction sites, in clinics, in pop-up classrooms, a hand Caleb once thought was only good for signing checks or power of attorney forms. That night, I opened my laptop, logged into the Second Journey blog, and began writing a new post. I titled it, "The Final Gift I'm Giving My Son." My son called a senior care facility, claiming to be my legal representative, and told them I'm starting to lose my mind. I'm writing this post from northern Uganda, where today I taught children how to blend their first English syllables. I just helped coordinate a malaria medication distribution. Last night, I worked on a grant proposal for school supplies in a village MOA. If that's what confusion looks like, maybe the world could use more people losing their minds like me. I kept writing this time without softening or tiptoeing like before. I understand that money worries can turn good people into schemers. I understand that fear of responsibility, of obligation, can make people invent reasons to control others. But I won't let anyone, not even someone the next morning who once called me mom, decide where I live, what I do, or whether I deserve to live freely. As I hit publish, within an hour, the post had hundreds of comments. A woman from Georgia wrote, "You're not just living for yourself. You're living for mothers like me who were pushed into the shadows because we were seen as a problem to solve." Another reader from Colorado said, "The greatest gift you gave your son was the truth, even if it hurt." I closed the laptop and sat quietly on the volunteer home's front step. In the darkness, insects chirped and the sound of children laughing in the distance carried through the air. I knew with certainty this was freedom Caleb could never imagine. The next morning, I received an email from attorney Harold Klen. "Maria, Caleb just contacted me. He inquired about filing for financial guardianship. I declined to assist, but I thought you should know, this is no longer just about money. It's a potential legal battle. If you'd like me to prepare a formal response, don't hesitate to reach out." Harold, I reopened my laptop and typed a new email to caleb.onmail.com. Subject about your mother's future. New email. "Caleb, I have received your messages and the missed calls you didn't bother to follow up on. I've also heard from Brookhaven about your attempts to declare yourself my legal representative in order to arrange a nursing home placement and apply for financial aid on my behalf. Are you truly concerned for me? Or are you just afraid of losing control over something you believe you're entitled to? I'll be direct. I am not anyone's financial backup plan. Not yours, not Denise's, and not for a child you two can't afford to raise. As for my assets, I'm finalizing the process of transferring most of what remains into 3 charitable funds. One for public health care, one for children's education in underprivileged areas, and one specifically for middle-aged women rebuilding their lives after loss. If you plan to come looking for an argument later, understand this. I am leaving a strange silence. Nothing to those who manipulate, control, or don't understand what real love looks like. But if you want a genuine relationship with me, without conditions, without taking, I'm still here. Just know I owe no one an explanation. Maria Easton. I didn't feel relieved the way people describe when they say they've spoken their truth. What came was a strange silence, like I had just closed a chapter I'd been living in for far too long. 2 days later, Caleb replied, short, abrupt, no greeting line. If this is the kind of punishment you wanted to give me, then congratulations. Denise cried all night. We're borrowing money from friends to cover baby expenses. I don't understand why you're choosing to treat your own family this way. But if you've made up your mind, I don't know what else to say, Caleb. I the next step emailed Harold the following morning. Harold, please move forward with the next step we discussed and make sure to add a clause to the will that states any request to renegotiate the estate will not be considered without my direct presence or written authorization from my appointed agent. Minutes later, Harold sent his reply. Understood. I'll update the will and send over a draft for your review by Monday. The following week in Bal was packed. Our volunteer group was completing a 3-room community health post. We were short on basic supplies, thermometers, gauze, cold medicine. So I launched a fundraiser through the Second Journey blog. People often assume that a year-old woman should settle down, sit in a rocking chair, knit, and say yes to everything her family plans. But I believe this. As long as my hands still work, my mind is sharp, and my heart is beating, I still have the right to choose. When was the last time I lived for myself? Probably when I was one must. So now it's time the post spreads to live again, no matter how late. The post spread through older women's communities across the country from Seattle to Atlanta. Many sent me private messages. Some asked for sample will clauses. Others requested recommendations for trustworthy nonprofit organizations. I wasn't trying to be a leader, but somehow I had become a voice for those who'd been written off as done. That night, as I watered the plants along the side of the house, I got another email from Caleb. This time, there was no blame. Just one single line. Did you never mean to cut me off completely? Just wanted me to understand something? I went inside, sat down at the wooden table, and looked at an old photo I'd brought from Boston. Me and Ray taken at Arnold Arboretum in the fall of Coulthard. His hand on my shoulder, his eyes filled our. I replied to Caleb with pride. I replied to Caleb, "You're right. I never wanted to cut you off, but I can't keep staying silent while others feel free to hurt me. If you truly want to understand, start by accepting that I am no longer the woman you once believed you could manage. And if you're ready to rebuild, I'm still here." I arrived in Kenya on a February morning before the sun had risen high and the red soil was still damp with night mist. From the airport in Nairobi, a vehicle from the organization drove me straight to a semi-arid region near the town of Aolo, where the mobile medical team was setting up a temporary clinic for over residents scattered across the area. As I stepped out, the wind from the airport in Nairobi gently tugged at my headscarf, revealing my silver hair tied neatly at the nape of my neck. A little girl around years old stared at me and said something in Swahili. The interpreter laughed. "She's asking if you're the grandmother of the whole team." I smiled, bent down, and said, "Yes, sweetheart." But this grandmother still works. The work here was different from Uganda, harsher. The drought had made clean water more precious than gold. I was in charge of managing the appointment schedule, staying in touch with the medical teams, and preparing the weekly deliveries of medicine. During the sweltering afternoons, I wrote blog posts under an old acacia tree where the internet signal was laughably weak, but just strong enough to upload a few lines. A year ago, I wore black and sat at my husband's funeral, believing my world had ended. My son and his wife were discussing placing me in a nursing home, as if I no longer had the mental capacity to understand what they were saying. Today, I'm sitting on the other side of the world from Boston, writing this after helping distribute overdoses of fever medicine to children with malaria. I no longer need anyone's permission to be myself. The next morning, I woke up to find the post had been shared over 1,000 times. 1 week later, I received an email from Harold Klen. Both of those emails were Second Light Foundation, a pretty brief impromptu, but not unproductive or unplanned. The new will has been officially signed. All assets, including the 3 investment accounts, the Vermont home, and the proceeds from the life insurance policy, have been transferred into the Second Light Foundation, just as you named it. I've also sent formal notification to Caleb along with a copy of the will. So far, I haven't received a response from him. I looked at the words Second Light Foundation. Second Light. Not Ray's, not my son's, but the light of a woman who dared to reignite the part of her life she thought had gone out. I kept going. The next stop was Ethiopia, where they needed someone to coordinate logistics for a clean water project. I closed my journal, slung my backpack over my shoulder. I had never felt more fully alive. My story isn't just a journey from widow to international volunteer. It's proof that age cannot confine the desire to live with purpose. I was once seen as a burden, my future mapped out by those I loved most. But I stood up, walked away from the silence, and chose a life of meaning. Not to prove anything to anyone, but to honor myself. Sometimes the greatest freedom isn't in where you go, but in daring to go at all. What do you think about Maria's choice? Was she too strong or just strong enough to reclaim her life? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and